Welcome to Quickbase 101. In this PowerPoint, you'll learn how to define certain items in Quickbase and get ready to take some online modules on how to actually go into the Quickbase data system and enter data. So the objectives for this training are to understand Quickbase, the database, and its purpose, understand key definitions that are used in Quickbase, know how to log in and begin to enter data. But before we begin, I want to talk a little bit more about performance measures. And for all AmeriCorps grants, we have to identify different performance measures that you as navigators will be working toward during your service year. We do collect data to report on these performance measures for our federal grant requirements. And certainly for federal grant requirements, but it's really important so that we can really see that impact that we're making throughout each year and the impact that we're having in our community. So performance measures are really important. And as such, it's very important that the data you enter is accurate and reported regularly. And we'll talk a little bit more later on in the presentation about when data will be due. Just an overview of Recovery Corps performance measures. We wrote into our federal grants that we will be reporting this year on the number of individuals served by navigators, as well as the number of individuals who report an increase in an overall sense of well-being in their recovery journey. We do also track the number of individuals who will be identifying a pathway for recovery that includes engagement in the community, things like employment, civic engagement opportunities, or even maybe AmeriCorps service opportunities. And then the number of individuals who obtain a service-related or an employment position. For Opportunity Corps, we're going to be also reporting on performance measures, and we report on the number of individuals who are served and the number of individuals who obtain a job. We don't only track that, we track a lot more than that though. And some of those things that we track are the number of individuals who begin and complete a training, and then whether or not any jobs that they get during their experience with our program are living wage. And we'll talk a little bit more later on how to track that. So this is just a little screenshot of what it will look like when you are prompted to log into the Quickbase that you get invited to. You'll receive an email to your work email address, not your personal email address, and this email will invite you to Quickbase. It's an automated email, so if you don't see it in your inbox, you should definitely check your junk mail folder to see if it accidentally went there. So you'll click on that email and you'll follow the steps outlined in that email to set up your own username and password. It's going to be connected again to your work email address or your service site email address. And so you're going to want to bookmark and save that information someplace secure and confidential for future reference. So you're going to be creating that login. Our program won't be able to have access to that login, and it will be sent again to your work email. So please check that email and follow the steps outlined there to set up your account. So let's cover a few basic definitions that are important when you're thinking about Quickbase and how to enter data this year. So we've talked a lot about Quickbase. It's our online database that both Opportunity Corps and Recovery Corps use to collect participant information and to be able to report on those performance measures that I outlined just a few slides ago. We're going to talk a lot about the Opportunity and Recovery Corps application. This is going to be the online database, basically, that you have access to. It's one application of overall Quickbase in general. So you will have access to the Recovery Corps and Opportunity Corps application. Within that application, you'll see a home tab, or kind of like a home screen, and then a variety of different tables in which you'll be able to input data that we'll ask for. So the first table that you will have access to is the participants table. And participants are individuals that you work with, that you're providing service or assistance to throughout your service year. There's also an individual services table, and individual services is kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's one-to-one time that you spend with a participant. So it could be an in-person meeting, it might be a retention phone call or checking in. You might be providing resources or information over the phone for an individual. But basically, any time that you spend in a one-to-one setting providing services to a participant is going to be included as an individual service. Group services are what we consider in both of our programs to be soft skills. So any services that you might provide to more than one individual at a time, so a group of people. These can be things such as job club, maybe a group recovery session, a work readiness class, etc. Group services are not considered a vocational training program, and we'll get into that a little bit more in just a moment here. But group services are really building on all of those soft skills that you may be, again, teaching individuals at your site during your service year. Experience is when your participant gets a job, an internship, a practicum, maybe an AmeriCorps service experience or things like that. That's where you're going to be recording all of that information if your participant, if it applies to your participant. Training, the training table is what we really focus on for hard skills. So separate from group services, training is going to be more vocationally based, and it's probably going to be most applicable to the Opportunity Corps program, but certainly not limited to that, since we do know that Recovery Corps folks may be serving individuals who also enroll into a training program or an educational program. So trainings are considered in-depth classes that are offered to your participants, and they're usually part of a vocational program. They can be internal, offered by your organization potentially, or external. So you may be helping somebody access a training program outside of your service site. Again, trainings are considered hard skills. They're not those soft skill classes like job club or keyboarding or group recovery session or something like that. Those are going to be recorded in group services, whereas trainings, examples of trainings might be something like construction training offered by Summit Academy, OIC. Maybe you're helping your participant enroll in school again. Maybe they had to take some time away from their post-secondary education to go through the recovery process. And so now they're ready to go back into school, and you're going to be helping them maybe enroll back into their school. So that could also be an example of a training. So it's all hard skill based and not those soft skill classes that might be a little bit more transferable. Last but not least, one thing I want to make sure that we talk about is the unique identification number. This is the number that your organization, your site, assigns to each unique participant, and you use this number to report into Quickbase. The program does not come up with these numbers. This is a number, again, that your organization will need to identify and assign to each unique participant. A lot of times, organizations use an existing number that they're already using as part of their own existing database, and we would strongly recommend that you do that at your site because there needs to be consistency between program years. So if a navigator from a different program year or a year before you serves a participant, and then that participant comes back to your organization to receive services from you, we'll already know that that participant's been entered into our database. So it's very important that you work with your site to make sure that you know exactly what system to use to assign those unique identification numbers. If you have questions regarding the unique identification number and aren't sure which number to use, follow up with the program specialist or program manager. So now that we've covered some basic definitions as it relates to Quickbase, we want to make sure that you know when you need to input your data by. Data should be completed as soon as possible. Regularly is very important. And certainly we strongly suggest that members complete their data entry weekly. But at the very least, you must have complete, accurate data into Quickbase by the second Friday of each month. Again, we strongly recommend that you're reporting data much sooner than monthly. We certainly know that schedules get busy and it's not always easy to make time for data entry, but it's incredibly crucial that we have accurate data in a regular fashion, so that our data reports, when on our end, on the program's end, we pull together all of these progress report information. We report progress reports quarterly, so we need to make sure that we've got that complete and accurate data in regularly so that our reports for our federal grants requirements can be accurate as well. One other thing to watch out for is just watching for duplicates. So checking those unique identification numbers is going to be, again, very important. And when you view video modules, when we get actually into the database, we'll show you how to go about checking those unique identification numbers for duplicates. A couple of things that we'd like for everybody to remember: if you are including employment information as it relates to your participant, we have a living wage calculator. It's used to check participants' wage to see if they did in fact earn a living wage. It's only an option if your participant is working 36 hours a week or more. That's how living wage is defined. And there is going to be a little link in the experience table on the left side of the living wage field for you to be able to check that information. Living wage depends on number of dependents in a household and things like that. And so that link in that living wage section of the experience table will be able to direct you on how to go about doing that better. And we'll show you once we get into the application what that actually looks like. Another thing to remember is retention. Especially tracking retention in a job or training is very important. So make sure that you know if this is your role as a navigator this year or another person at your site, and follow up accordingly. So if someone else does retention phone calls at your site, we still want you to be recording that information into Quickbase. So make sure that you understand who that is and where you can find that information in a timely fashion if you're not the one making retention phone calls for people's employment or training or other kind of goals on their action plan. And finally, it's really important to remember, if you make a mistake, that it's okay. You don't have the power to delete anything in Quickbase, and that's actually a good thing, because if something doesn't go right, we're able to take care of that on our end. We're able to help you eliminate duplicates, or if you recorded something incorrectly, that's okay. So if you did realize that you made a mistake, we all do it. Just send an email to your program specialist or your program manager to delete. So now this presentation is coming to an end. So you're going to receive a series of online modules to watch and complete so that you can better understand how to record data this year. There's also a step-by-step guide of how to enter data in your AmeriCorps program manual on page 132. It has been, this manual was printed before Recovery Corps came on board. And so for the 2017-18 program year, it's not inclusive of Recovery Corps, but it is a great start, and it has all of those definitions and things that I talked about earlier on in this presentation written down as well. So it's nice to have things in two places. So when you're watching the modules online, if you find it helpful to follow along in your manual on page 132, please do so.